One of the things that all of us who go through ministry, particularly for the priesthood, is something called clinical pastoral education, or CPE for short. And the idea of CPE is that it puts each of us in a hospital setting, something important for our ministry later. But it also adds a component that helps us look at what is going on and to process those things that we may be feeling as we go through very vulnerable times with people. Now, unfortunately, the program has often strayed from the good intentions that it was created for. Many of my compatriots have had difficult experiences. I've known few who have good ones, except for maybe those who go into chaplaincy on their own. And I definitely was one of those who had a difficult experience, because one of the things that you really need to have a good experience in CPE is a really good supervisor for the program. And the one I was at had a terrible one. The Reverend Doctor who led us, she was not always very clear, so it was kind of hard to figure out what she wanted, what she was saying. There were many times when it felt like she was actually trying to pit us against one another. And as I would learn much later on, what she was using on us was Gestalt therapy. And if you haven't heard of that, it's good. It's a terrible, terrible form of therapy. It's one of those things that's thankfully very little used today. And in fact, there's only one method from it called the chair method that has anything good to offer from it. The only thing that's still used from it today. Being a difficult experience, it was hard for me to talk about what I experienced in CPE. And the result of that is, in talking with my seminary and then later my diocese, was that I hadn't gotten enough from it. So I was told to go into another unit of CPE, which someone dealing with a traumatic event told, you're going back into it, is a very difficult thing to do. Now, thankfully, my second unit was a lot better. I was down in Atlanta working at this Episcopal church, Holy Comforter, and their program was based on working with those who live with mental illness or disabilities. So it was a really, really wonderful experience to be able to take a part in. But it had been a tough year. On top of everything else, I'd been going through multiple surgeries for my finger, which still cannot bend properly, has an artificial joint in it. And so all of these experiences left me pretty broken. And I find at difficult times, it's often helpful to go on a retreat. And it just so happened that my mentor, the very Reverend Heidi Kenner, had a place out in Montana where she was serving at the time, a place where I had been very honored to have the opportunity before seminary to serve with her. And she gave me the opportunity to go out there to have a time of retreat. The only thing she asked in return is that I help with the youth group there, a group that I knew very well and very much enjoyed being with. And one day, as I was getting ready to go on the retreat portion of this trip, I was telling Heidi about everything that I had been going through that year. And she paused after I was talking with her about this. And she said to me, "Trey, are you mad at God for something God did or for something people did?" And that's often a very important question for us to ask. And there are other questions that are very similar to that. The one that comes up for many of us is, why do bad things happen to good people? Now, personally, I would not call myself good. I would not need the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ if I was. But at the time, as I was going through all these difficult moments in the second year of my time in seminary, it seemed like, to me at the time, I was going through hardships that I didn't deserve. The other question that we often ask related to these two is, why did God allow this to happen? These are the big questions, the ones that many of us face, the ones that are often difficult for us to answer. Now, it turns out that the preacher, Thomas Long, has a book on this, What Shall We Say? And it offers an introduction to these questions, a starting place for these issues. Now, it's not a long book, but if you want to just get the main meat out of it, go into the last chapter, because it talks about the very gospel that we heard today, the parable of the wheat and the chaff. And as we just heard in this story, an enemy comes and plants weeds among the wheat. And as both of these plants, one that is valuable, one that is not, the servants of the field aren't quite sure what to do. Now, the master in this does know what to do. He's a very good farmer and realizes if they get rid of the wheat now, the roots that are intertwined between the two will mean that the wheat is ruined as well. So what he elects to do is to wait till the harvest season is over and then take the wheat, take the weeds out of the ground, sort them out, put the wheat where it needs to be in storage for eating and those sort of purposes, and to take the weeds, the useless bits, and throw them in the fire. Now, the point of this story is that evil happens in the world. We don't always know when it will come. We don't always know the form it will come in. We don't know where evil comes from. But what we do know is that God didn't cause it. And what we also know is that God will win out over evil in the end. That is the lesson from our parable today. That even when it seems like evil is winning, God does win out in the end. God doesn't cause the evil, as Heidi reminded me, but God is there with us to make sure that good does win. And it may sometimes seem like, why is it taking so long? And that's something that Paul speaks to us about this morning. It may take time, but it's worth it. It's worth it for what happens to us at the end. All we need to do is take the time and be patient. And though it may seem unfair to us that we have to suffer from the evil one, the good news is that we never do that alone. And that's the purpose for the story of Jacob's ladder. Because in Jacob's time, people thought that gods were tied to the land. So Jacob, as he's leaving home, thinks he's leaving everything behind. His family, all the people he's known, and the gods of his father, the God. But that turns out not to be the case, because as he goes over into a different land, he has this vision. He learns from this that God is not tied to where his father is, that God is there with him wherever he goes. And that's true for us, and that should very much give us hope. Now, for my own life, I take comfort that God is never the cause of my suffering. And I take even more comfort that God is with me in those trials and tribulations, even at times when I, like Jacob, don't even realize that God is there. Good will win out in the end. And all we have to do is remember Paul's words for us. Be patient, for when that time will come.